Hi everyone, this is Dr. Antonelli. Welcome to our first PowerPoint that is voiced over as it would be if I lectured in the classroom. We are going to talk about this topic 6, I call it, personal, social, and moral development, in a series of probably 2 to 3 parts, and I'll only do little snippets about 10 or 15 minutes for each section. And then you can ask any questions when we meet together on Zoom. So let's jump right in and talk about some of the big ideas that this particular topic has to do with. The first one talks about children's personalities, and their sense of who they are is going to influence the things that they do, their behaviors. Also, that there are many benefits from productive, keyword being productive, relationships with peers that children and adolescents gain. And then social situations have different interpretations depending on the child, and these interpretations often impact how children interact with each other. Okay, so that's another one of the big ideas that we will discuss. In addition, when we get into the moral development piece, we'll talk about moral reasoning and pro-social behaviors and how they really do come out early in life when children are very, very young, but then over time they will evolve as children grow older. Another piece we'll talk about after all sections of personal, social, and moral development is how teachers can be effective in their classrooms by kind of looking at students individually, their personalities, their temperaments, their behaviors that are productive or not, and how they view themselves, and how we need to accommodate all of those things in the classroom in order to be successful. In addition, we also need to create kind of a classroom environment where we can foster and promote and enhance things that students are trying to develop in the social area and in the moral area. So all of these big ideas we will cover over the next couple of lectures. Okay, we always do a case study first. And this case study has to do with a school play in middle school and how there's an 8th grade class that really they're seeing has two kind of distinct groups to it, a popular group and unpopular group. These are terms you heard of if you recall when you were back in middle school. And so what they've done is they've decided to involve every single one of the students in the 8th grade in that play. And as a result, the play is kind of like a group project where every single 8th grade student has to be involved, and there were amazing results from it. And a couple of the questions that are interesting to think about here is that why might social groups be so important for young adolescents? That's always a key question because it's one of the most important, if not as important as academics in middle school. So why might social groups be so important for young adolescents? Well, because it's such a time of really great anxiety when it comes to changes, both physically as well as prior friendships, as well as, not being that close with teachers anymore when you reach middle school, and how more is expected of you academically. So again, because of that, all of those things, social groups become really important to students because they're under so much pressure to do everything else here as well. In addition, around that middle school time, self-worth, or how someone judges themselves as being valuable, often really takes a nosedive, and students often look more to their peers than even family members for their support kind of system. All right. So again, being in a high status group or the popular group can be a source of comfort. But remember, in order for there to be a high status or popular group, there obviously has to be a group of peers that are considered low status so that you have a comparison between high and low. That's kind of just a given in the way things go. The second question about the school play was what benefits might doing the all class, meaning having every single 8th grader involved, in the school play have? What might be the benefits of that? And why does the class seem to do really well with this? Okay, well, in reality, what it does is having every student involved in the play kind of breaks that idea of two groups down and says, okay, everybody's now in this together. We're all on the same level. there's a common goal we're trying to work toward, to do well and get this play off the ground and do it really well. And we need to work cooperatively to do that, so that anyone who's doing this can actually look good. So we've broken down the popular, unpopular, high status, low status group, and that's why it works so well to have every single student involved. Okay, so again, this kind of issue really relates to the social development piece that we're going to talk about later on, this particular case study, but it just gives you an idea generally of middle school and social development. Okay, let's talk about the first of the three developments, personal development. And we will talk about just general statements about personality and sense of self. We did talk about sense of self, self-concept, self-identity, if you recall, in the prior topic 6. So you can always go back to that to pull a little bit more information about that sense of self-concept, self-identity, all of those things from that prior PowerPoint. So the first piece is about heredity, which has to do with nature. Remember the nature-nurture debate? Heredity also referring to nature and temperament that a child is born with, and their environment, meaning the nurturing part of the environment, often parenting styles is connected here. Those two things kind of crisscross and interact in order to shape the child's personality. Another general statement about personal development has to do with children having what we call 5 relatively stable personality traits, and we use the word ocean to remember them, by OCEAN, openness to ideas. They're conscientious, they're extroverted, meaning outward and outgoing. They have an agreeableness toward doing things, or neuroticism toward just wanting to get things done and kind of fretting over things. These are pretty stable in children. We see them in most children. However, even though we see this commonality of these traits, the way that children behave is kind of different based on where they are and the context of where they are. So for example, children will behave differently if there's new people around them, versus when they're like around their friends. You've seen that. They act completely different at times, all right? Just also another piece on personality development is with age. And over time, children will gradually develop kind of more complex thinking about themselves and who they are, and how they feel about themselves. That is a continually evolving and changing kind of concept. Okay, more statements or general ideas about personal development. And that is that as children grow older, they also kind of develop these more realistic perceptions of themselves, and they become more stable as they get older. They don't kind of change from one day to the next as to how they feel about themselves or how they perceive themselves. That will become more stable, and they look at it more in terms of abstract concepts, not just, let's say, physical features like I have brown hair or I have blue eyes. Their self-perceptions become more abstract, like I'm a really kind person, or I really enjoy doing things that make other people happy. Like those kinds of things is what it'll eventually, as children age, get to. Okay, learners' self-perceptions, how they view themselves, will also impact how they behave. So for example, if they have positive self-perceptions, they feel really good about themselves, and they see themselves in positive ways doing good things, they're more likely to succeed academically, socially, and physically. Okay, so it's always good as a teacher to try to promote these positive self-perceptions. As children begin to reach puberty, which, as we know, usually starts around age 9 or 10, they start beginning to understand that they're actually very unique in who they are and how they feel about themselves, things like that. However, sometimes that goes overboard, where they almost think that no one else is like them. And this is a term called personal fable. And that's kind of the extreme. So it's not helping them to actually have that idea, because it's better that they see how others are like them and may be experiencing things similar to them so that they can relate. Okay. The next one talks about other statements related to personal development, is that sometimes people and how they behave will affect how a learner has this sense of self. They think that everyone is watching their every move. They call this the imaginary audience concept. It's really not true, yet when adolescents behave in this way, it's just like they think everyone is kind of watching everything, and that's really not what is going on, okay? Group memberships, meaning am I in the popular group, am I not? That is actually going to impact the sense of self, which is part of personality development and personal development. A student often has high self-esteem, obviously, if they're in the popular group, which is often thought to be the successful group. Gender, we've always talked about gender issues throughout these topics in EdPsych, and gender plays an important role as well in what learners see themselves as. A schema, which is a term we talked about with Piaget, means males kind of think of them what they're like and what females are like. This is what's called a schema, what we think males should be like and what females should be like. And just a kind of a general statement to remember is that often boys rate themselves more favorably than girls during that adolescent time. Despite outside influence, sometimes learners will really kind of define who they are by their own ideas and their rules about behavior, even though there is peer pressure from the outside to do this. Okay, they do have this internal mechanism to help them with that as well. In addition, parenting styles have a direct influence on personal development. We have a couple of different parenting styles. The first one is authoritative, which has to do with emotional warmth, high standards for behavior, explanations. They kind of include children in decision making, and as a result of this style, the results are children are very happy, they're energetic, they're self-confident, they're likable, all those things that are listed there, which is a good thing. So this is the best parenting style to use, and it's a very positive one because the results are children who are very well adjusted and positive. The other parenting style the book focuses on is called authoritarian. This is where it's very rigid. Parents make the rules, you have to obey without question, and this kind of results in children that are very defiant. They don't have many social skills. They worry more about pleasing the parents than actually problem solving. They were withdrawn, those kinds of issues, which are very negative. In addition, what I would have liked to have done in class is to have you think of 10 adjectives to describe yourself, which would give us a bit more about each of your own sense of self. And this would have been a great activity as we would read them out and kind of have people try to guess, since you guys knew each other from class, and that's what I would have done in class. So you can always think of 10 adjectives to describe yourself. In addition, when we talk about personal development, we mentioned this in the last topic, is the identity issue. It's how you've constructed your own definition of who you are. And things that you think are important. And then those 4 status stages were in the topic 6 PowerPoint, so you might just refer back to them. These are things that adolescents go through when trying to just basically find out who they are and what they want, okay? Last slide is how teachers can foster a student's personal development. That is part of our job in the classroom. We have to make sure that what we're doing in school and setting up an environment kind of accommodates all the different temperaments that we will see in our classrooms. We have to help students figure out kind of their identity, who they are, both socially as well as their academics. We have to think of adolescents and risk-taking that they tend to participate in, and we have to kind of channel it and give them opportunities for safe activities. This good example is such as having an all-night party at school. You guys probably might know this as like after graduation in high school, they do that all-night thing somewhere so that it kind of limits the risk taking when students go out and maybe abuse alcohol after graduation or anything along those lines. We would do this more, channel it more into safe activities. In addition, we need to create a warm and supportive environment with what is acceptable or not acceptable in our classrooms. This aligns with the authoritative piece for parenting. We just bring it into the classroom in that way. And then of course we always want to support students who are at risk, and there are lots of categories of students at risk. Those who are at risk for having a history of failure, if they have emotional or behavioral problems, if they kind of are disengaged or disinvolved with school and don't actually want to be there, we have to consider that as well. So a whole bunch of things there. Also be on the lookout for exceptional challenges at home that they might be facing. Provide extra support and guidance for students with disabilities, especially the ones that may have an effect on their personal and social functioning. disorders like autism, emotional behavioral disorders. All of those are related to personal development and things we should be doing. And of course, be alert for signs that a student may be contemplating suicide. This has great and traumatic effects, and it's one of the things that teachers should be responsible for